All right, so by the end of class today, hopefully you'll be able to find the mean, the median, the mode, the range, and the outlier of a set of data and determine which best represents that set of data. Statistics is the study of sets of numerical data. When we gather numerical data, besides displaying it, we often want to know a single number that represents the data as a whole. We call these numbers measures of central tendencies. So just ways that we can kind of depict the numbers and express them as a representation of what they mean. Okay? Moving on. Moving on. Moving on. Oh, come on, board. All right, so like I said, to learn about this, we're just going to dive into it and look at a real example and use the words as we go. A survey was taken amongst 13 people. Always important to know how many people we're discussing here. So 13. Oh, is this going to be one of these days? So it's just important to know how many people we're talking about. So in this case, we're talking about 13 people and their passwords. The results are in ascending order, which means they're getting bigger. So they start with the smaller numbers and then they get larger. So we have passwords of 6 letters or 6 characters, 7 characters, 8 characters, 9 characters, and 15 characters. So that one person really wants to make sure that nobody's going to ever get their password, because obviously the longer that they are, the harder it is to figure them out. With letter A, we're going to ask you what the most popular length of a password was, also known as the mode. So again, I'm giving you the definition right in here. The most popular length of a password. So length of a password, the most popular is the real key here, and that would be simply the one we see the most. And we see 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So 8 is the most popular, okay? And the reason is because it occurred 5 times, which is more than any other number. And that is not enough room for me, but hopefully enough room for you on that paper, okay? Next up, we go to the median. So the word median actually means the middle. So let me highlight that. The middle of this data would be in obviously halfway between the first number and the last number. So if there are 13 people, it's important to realize that the middle is going to have 6 on either side. So let's count it in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so that puts 8 in the middle, that 8 right there, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the other side. So yes, 8 can mean more than one thing. It was the mode previously, and here it is the median. So let's go with a different color to kind of separate this. 8, because there are 6 numbers on both sides of 8. It's the middle number. And it says, of the 13 people surveyed, what was the average number of characteristics? Meaning, remember, this is 6 characters, 7 characters, 8 characters, 9 characters, and 15 characters. The average is when you take them all and add them up and then divide by the number that there is. So you can literally enter then the 6, the 7, the 7, the 7, the 7, the 8. You can enter all of these in, but I'm going to show you a slight shortcut to this, which involves a little multiplication, because multiplication is repeated addition. So you're going to add 6 2 times. So it's going to be 6 times 2. And then add that with 7, which you are doing 3 times. You have 3 7s. So 7 plus 7 plus 7 is 21. 3 times 7 is 21. So again, multiplication is repeated addition. 8, there are 5 of those. So 8 times 5. And then 9 times 2. There's 2 of those. And then there's just one 15, so plus 15. We have to divide this all by the number of people that we had, the number of passwords, which again from the beginning was 13, and that's why that was so important to know. Go ahead and type this into the calculator just as you see it. So it's going to be, and it looks like I had some junk on my calculator from before, 6 times 2 plus 7 times 3 plus 8 times 5. Just don't forget the addition sign. 9 times 2 plus 15. And again, if that didn't make sense to you, you could have just typed in all 13 numbers and made sure you added them together. Go ahead, press enter. There's my total for 106. I then divide that by the number of passwords there was, 13, and it works out to be about 8.15. Let's round to the nearest tenth today. So if there is a 1 in the tens place with a 5 behind it, we are going to kick that up to a 2. So we're going to round this to simply 8.2. There is your mean, or the average. Same way you figure out your grade point average. You take all of your grades, you add all the numbers up, and then divide by the number of assignments that you have. All right, the range, and again, the definition is right inside of the question. What is the difference between the highest and the lowest number of characters? Range. So the highest number of characters in a password was 15. This was the one that did not want their identity stolen. And they're going to subtract that from the lowest number of characters, 6. So what's the difference between the highest password characters and the lowest password characters? 9 characters, yeah. So there was quite the difference between people with their password. Doesn't fit with the rest. And so that is called an outlier. I kind of call this like an outlaw. An outlaw is somebody that doesn't kind of go with the norm, somebody that kind of doesn't really follow the rules. Similar with an outlier, is there a number that kind of doesn't fit with this set of data? And that would be a yes. That would be 15. Now, so 15 was the outlier because that's a large gap between 9 and 15, where the other numbers were much closer. Please pause the video to get that down before I move on. And then for which central tendency was most affected by that outlier? It affects the mean the most because it increases the sum and makes the average look higher than the data may suggest. Just like when a really low grade brings down your average, it does affect it if it's an outlier because it's changing the numbers, the sum, and then what you're dividing by remains the same. Again, pause the video if you need to get all that down. All right, next question. Now let's get into it. We got Mrs. Vance Automotive class. How many people are actually taking this with Mrs. Vance? Yeah, I know quite a few students typically do. She's a great teacher, and that's a great class to kind of get yourself, in the right direction with automotive and just basic repairs. So, her automotive class was trying to determine if people speed along a certain section of roadway. So they collect the speed of 20 vehicles. So in the question, without even having to count, they tell you how many vehicles, which again is really important to us. That was my bad, not the board's fault. So let's look at the chart. Now the chart gives us the speed and how many cars were speeding. So that's one car at 29 miles an hour. But this is 2 cars at 33, so that's 2 33s. Then there's 4 cars going 34, 5 cars going 35, 3 36. I think you get the point. So just because you see it in the chart once doesn't necessarily mean that's how many times they registered a car. So what is the mode? Again, go back to the first example. I've got the definition in it, but hopefully you remember that the mode is the one that occurred the most often. And when we have a set of data like this, it's pretty easy to pick up on that it's actually 35 miles an hour, okay? So 35 miles per hour because there were 5 cars going that fast, all right? Now the median is the one that's in the middle. And so there's 20 cars. So what we might want to do is make another side column. All right, and the side column will help us determine how many cars we're at. So we started with 1, and then we add 1 plus 2, and now that's 3 total cars. And then the 3 plus 4 makes 7. So at this point right here, we're with 7 cars. We add again 7 and 5 to make 12. So we're past the halfway point right here, because half of 20 is 10. So this would be, again, 35 miles per hour. Cap, we had the mode at 35 miles an hour because it happened 5 times, and we had the median of the data at 35 miles an hour because the 10th number, half of the data of 20 is 10, occurred when a car was traveling at 35 miles an hour. Now we move on to the range. So the range, remember, is the difference between the highest and the lowest. So what is the fastest car? We got Dylan Kersey. Sorry, racer car 8. We got Dylan going 54 miles an hour in a 35 because maybe he was riding in his race car. And then we had the slowest car at 29 miles an hour, and that was probably me that Dylan was passing. So what is the range? Well, subtract those, and then it's a difference of 25 miles per hour. So here we go with finding the mean, finding your average speed. And so we had one car going 29 miles an hour, so just 29 plus. And then the next group of cars were going 33. Now you had 2 of those, so multiply that by 2. Then you had cars going 34 miles an hour, which there were 4 of those. And then add the cars that were going 35 miles an hour, and there were times 5 of those. And then we had cars going 36 miles an hour, so times 3. And then we had cars going 38 miles an hour, times 2. 39, we had 2 of those. And finally we had, oops, that was adding. Let's change that to multiplying. Hopefully that was the only mistake I had. 39 times 2, and then one car traveling 54 miles an hour. So we don't have to multiply that by anything because it's just one car. So the sum, 722. How many cars were there? 20. So we divide by 20 and get an average of 36 miles an hour. Okay? So back to the notes. We had a sum of 722. We divided that by 20 cars, and 36.1 was the average speed. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. Is there an outlier? Well, is there one car that was going faster than most other cars? What do we think? Yeah, the outlier of 54 miles an hour. So there was one car going 54 miles per hour because it's so much faster than the rest. And finally, we finish up with that question. The speed limit along this part of the road is 35 miles an hour. Is it fair to make a conclusion that drivers go over the speed limit on this roadway, and which measure of central tendency would be best to use? So it's not fair to say that the it's not fair to say that more people are driving over the speed limit because our middle number, the median, is representing half, and half of those people are doing 35 or less. In fact, 12 people are doing 35 or less. So the mean of 36.6 that makes it seem like more people are going over the speed limit is actually impacted by the outlier, so not a great measure of central tendency to use here. All right, please pause the video to get that down, and we are now done with the notes.